So probably from Pak Rilus can start.
Or maybe it's better Bu Dami open it's formally first, and then after that I will take over.
Oh, okay.
Okay, can you take that off the screen then? Okay, so let us start. Good afternoon. Welcome to all participants who are joining our webinar this afternoon. It is a pleasure to invite you to our T20 international webinar. The topic for today is the Science Social Movement Interface for Food System Transformation. And this event is hosted by IPB University as one of the co-hosts of the T20 Indonesia for Task Force on Food Security and Sustainable Agriculture. And it is also hosted by CHIP Center for Indonesian Policy Studies. My name is Damayanti Bukhari, and I am the lead co-chair for Task Force number 4. And I'm also head of the Center for Transdisciplinary and Sustainability Science. In the age of crisis, we are now in crisis. Either it's the weather, it's geopolitics, or it's the pandemic. Yeah. Food insecurity has become more of a norm. A lot of people are now talking about food insecurity and what we need to prepare ourselves for the coming food insecurity that may become more and more prominent in the years to come. With that in mind, the United Nations has launched food system transformation. So now in respect to food security, food system transformation is key. Why is that? Well, because we have realized that with this global change and also the climate crisis, we need to change the paradigm. We need to change the way we think, we practice, the technology that we are developing needs also to adapt to the changing climate. And so as part of the task force for the T20, task force number 4 is responsible to think thoroughly on how we can best design a new sustainable food system and guide the transformation process to achieve it. In order to do that, the task force on food security has developed 15 policy briefs and also currently is developing the T20 communique that shall be delivered for the G20 meeting in November. So it is with that in mind that the food system transformation needs a sound policy, and sound policy needs good science, responsible science. But science itself is not enough. We see that the science can provide the technology, the knowledge, but in the end, it will be up to the policymaker, the decision maker, on how the science can actually influence the policy. In addition, there's also this science social movement interface. What is the role of the science social movement interface for food system transformation? How can science contribute to the social movement and vice versa? So these are the type of question that is interesting to be discussed to enrich ourselves in understanding about the food system transformation. So with that, I would like to thank Professor Rilus for hosting or for moderating this event. This is a very important event, and I think we will learn a lot from this session. And I would like to thank the speakers. We have Ibu Laksmi here, and also Famara from Africa, and also Ibu Pipi Supeni from Aman Kalimantan. So with that, I would like to welcome the speakers and the host and also the participant, and let us enjoy the next 1.5 hours or 1 hour 45 minutes, and let us begin. So thank you so much for participating, and I will give this time to Pak Rilus as our moderator. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So again, good afternoon, everyone. It is a pleasure for us to have this very interesting event this afternoon. So without further introduction, I just want um, to introduce our speakers. We, as mentioned by Prof. Dami, we have three speakers. We have three speakers. Hang on, I just want to. The first one is Bu Laksmi Adriani Savitri. I just want to read very shortly because she has a long list of curriculum vitae. In terms of education, Bu Laksmi has a postdoctoral fellowship in University of Amsterdam from 2011 to 2015, and then agrarian rural development course, International Institute of Social Studies in 2010, and then University of Kassel, Germany. She got a PhD in rural sociology, specializing on agrarian studies and gender, November 2007. And more actually, but I just stop there. And then professional experiences, there are many, and one is chairperson of National Board, FIAN Indonesia for the Right to Food, 2016 and until now, and then fellow Center of Transdisciplinary and Sustainability Sciences, Science in IPB 2020, and so on. So I think I just read part of just some of it. And in terms of publication, there are many publication. I just want to mention one that is very new, and I just asked her to send me this paper, very interesting, written together with Ben White and Graham. The title is Agrarian Movements and Rural Populism in Indonesia, Journal of Agrarian Change. It is in 2022, I mean. So that's our first speaker, and then after that, we will have the second is Famara Diediu, yeah, expert on urban rural management and planning, small scale farming and agriculture. In terms of education, he has MBA from African Center for Higher Studies in Management in Dakar, Senegal, and a master degree in regional planning, environment, and urban planning, urban management. I'm sorry, and he has long experiences, like 12 years professional experience working mostly in rural development, particularly in the establishment of community seed and cereal banks, and organizing women's groups for urban-rural partnership and advocacy, and also Program Officer Alliance for Food Sovereignty in Africa, and the others also, still long list actually. And the last speaker will be Ibu Pipi Supeni. She is an indigenous woman of the West Kutai, Dayak Benua community, activist on indigenous issues of Dayak, and community organizer. She has graduated from IKIP PGRI in East Kalimantan. She's very active, part of the women's activists in Aman also in. So that's our three speakers. So I think I want to give the first time to Ibu Laksmi. The time maybe just around 20 minutes. Can you make that around 20 minutes, Bu Laksmi? And then we have another, the second and the third presenter, and then we have discussion. I think we will have a lot of things to be discussed. So time is yours, Bu Laksmi, about 20 minutes, please.
Yes, thank you, Pak Relis. It's really a pleasure to be here and to be able to share with you the ideas for the discussion in this evening. And I would like to share screen. Is it allowed?
Should be, yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah, okay. It's okay. Yeah, thank you. Yes, my title is an offer to our discussion to talk about the positionality of science, because in the framework of discussion, in this discussion, science is placed as a mediator between social movement and policymaking processes. So that's why probably the appropriate question about it is whether science is neutral really, or is it needs to be political. And from the social movement point of view, actually the space of the politics is also the space of science. And when we talk about food system transformations, we cannot avoid to enter the dimension of governance. And in this dimension, social movement is always trying to make intervention through the policy-making processes. And either by using science or working together with scientists, or through direct actions against the policy that may not be appropriate according to social movement perspective. The main concern of the social movement is whether these triadic relations between social movement, science, and policy making is really a relations about mutual sharing of information, or are we talking about the effort to influence each other? So there is a question of power entering this dimension, and if that's the case, the agenda or the name of the game is influencing. And ideally, the relations between social movement and science is a relations of mutual inspiration, where social movements inspired by science, production of knowledge, scientific production of knowledge, and also science inspired by the knowledge production of the social movements and the people that they probably represent. So, and these mutual relations of inspiring each other could be empowered to influence the policymaking processes. So I think that's the ideal positions of these triadic relations. But of course, in reality, when we come into the discussion about the positionality of science, the question is the science for who? And in that questions, we may need to put another big actor in agri-food system, which is the agri-food corporations. And we cannot put them aside, because science then becomes the arena of competing interests between social movements and agri-food corporations, and the way they're influencing each other in the process of policy making. The agri-food corporations claim to have the interest for the sustainability of the planet, while also social movements also has the interest for the sustainability of the planet. And of course, this is all the interest of the interest of all actors in this table. But there are different interests, if we want to put it black and white, that claimed by the social movements and also by agri-food corporations. The interest of profit making, and the interest that claimed to be by social movements of representing the interests of the people. But this is actually a very complex web of interests, where the science itself needs to take into account this complex web of interest. And based on this, of course, the question is why we need to discuss this complex web of interest by including the interests of agri-food corporations. From the social movement perspective, there is a very problematic position of these agri-food corporations because of their business has to develop into the concentrations of the agri-food, develop into concentration of the agri-food supply chain. And actually, this is not an allegations or even the accusations, because the UN Special Rapporteur for the Right to Food mentioned that the world has been dominated by corporations in food systems that use wealth to generate more wealth instead of using life to generate more life. And this becomes the concern of the social movement perspective, because the realities of this, as based on the studies from the International Panel of Experts on Sustainable Food System in 2017, the concentrations of transnational corporation business is located in the agri-food input industries, and also the positions they take is to mediate, or as a mediator of the products between the producer to the consumer. And agri-food transnational corporation takes the positions as commodity traders, processors, and retailers, which also control the almost all of the 70% of products produced by smallholders. So in that case, we see that this concentration in the agro-food supply chains clearly has a profit interest, and this calls for the maintenance of the situation of the conditions of profit making. And in that case, the perspective of the right-based movement see these situations as the situations of corporate capture. By corporate capture, we mean that this is a situation where economic elites undermine the realization of human rights and the environment by exerting undue influence over domestic and international decision makers and public institutions. And the evidence of these conditions is actually can be seen from the event of United Nations Food Security Summit in 2021. And this summit is where the World Economic Forum and UN Secretariat has turned the summit very different from the previous Food Security Summit, then based into multi-stakeholder rather than multilateral mechanism, which enable a close interventions of big agri-food business who use science for directing the discourse into technological innovation, and exclude the actors and discourse on agroecology and right-based solutions. As you can see in this slide, there is a political divide in the summit about the solutions of food system transformation based on the grouping of the scientists. The first group, which is the UNFSS scientific group, is proposing a market and technological solution, while on the other hand, the high-level panel of experts that has already been there for a long time in the Committee on World Food Security, that has the special mechanism where the civil society and indigenous people can involve and participate in the formulations of policy recommendations to the food system governance, is excluded from the discussion. And that's why the more than 1,000 organizations actually reject the summit and responded by organizing a counter summit where people solutions is put to the fore. So the summit demonstrates how a political divide of science and scientists can be generated by the corporate capture of science. And the problem of corporate capture is also reflected at the national level because, of course, transnational corporations work at the local and national level. In Indonesia context, the corporate capture is even more evident by the showcase of this Jakarta Food Security Summit in this picture. You can see that this event where food security governance is discussed, there is no representative of farmers, fishers, or people working in the rural areas. And this is a very problematic for the food governance in Indonesia because there are at least 6 problems that cannot be solved. Firstly, the agrarian reform policy that is already there is implemented only as a means of land market expansion. And the second, there is an establishment of large-scale food estate to integrate smallholders into industrial agri-food supply chain. And in the social movement perspective, and also from peasant organizations, this is what we call as the control grabbing, because smallholders cannot decide anymore types of commodity and types of distribution that they want to do. And the third, there is a strong policy support for GMOs production and distribution, and also international agreements that Indonesia is leading on liberalization of agri-food trade, including seed. And there is a lack of regulations of ultra-processed food production, distribution, and promotions. And the results of this is the agri-food governance that actually show injustices in the social and ecological dimensions. Which reflected by the high stunting rate, malnutrition, obesity, and many degenerative diseases, and also continuous deforestations and high inequality that unsolved up to present. The response from such situations, from specifically FIAN Indonesia as part of FIAN International and Global Network for the Right to Food and Nutrition. FIAN Indonesia with 30 other organizations locally and nationally organized a People Assembly for Food Sovereignty in September 2021. And we produced a Food Sovereignty Manifesto that emphasized the importance of right-based approach. And we demand to the state that the state needs to implement the genuine agrarian reform, the protections of peasants and fisher rights, progressive realizations of the right to food and nutrition, also implement protect seed sovereignty and local food diversity, recognitions of women's role and rights in food production, access and control, also regulate the distribution and promotion of ultra-processed food, and Indonesia needs to refrain from any more free trade agreements. These recommendations also in line with the discussion at the global level, the civil society organization discussions on how food system transformation can happen. According to our analysis and our view, there are at least 5 pillars need to be constructed for this food system transformation. First is the people-centered and human rights-based government, and second, protection and regenerations of nature, and third, health, nutrition, and well-being for the transform the modes of production, and the last is culture, social relations, and knowledge that needs to be taken into account. And these 5 pillars are based on the principles of food sovereignty, agroecology, social solidarity economy, and intersectionalities. And FIAN Indonesia and our alliance chose to focus on 3 pillars. And the first pillar of people-centered, human rights-based, and people-centered and human rights-based governance actually consists of many actions. And you can see here, these actions not only actions that can be taken by movement organizations, but also by the people themselves. But we focus from all of these options to take actions. We focus on ensuring the applications of UN declarations on the rights of peasants and on the rights of indigenous peoples and other regulations that support the most disadvantaged groups of communities. And also, the most important thing for us is how to push the transformation based on people's own solutions. And the second pillar, we actually would like to develop actions and not only develop, but also implement actions that covered all of these probable actions that can be taken to strengthen the pillar. And the focus is to protect small-scale food producers and rights to land and other natural resources, which is the important measure that needs to be taken in the context of Indonesia. And the third pillar is the health, nutrition, and well-being. We focus on the efforts to consult with the government how the ultra-processed food can be controlled by taxes and warning labels. And 5 pillars of transformations for us is also providing a possible interface with science by including how science can be also right-based, can be also using the right-based approach. I think what we like to propose is how scientific inquiry can be tied into the needs of communities. So this is the important step to get into the co-production of knowledge between social movements and science to influence the policy making. And we would like to suggest a list of probable collaborations, field of collaborations in agroecology and natural farming, indigenous people and tenure and resource right, local seed bank and exchange mechanisms, social solidarity economy, ecofeminism and social reproduction, multi-species solidarity approach, and of course, nutritional science. The important point of this is how we can find a common ground that we need to transform a food system into a more social and ecological just food system. So I'll stop my presentation there, and thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Bu Laksmi. Very interesting, provocating thought, I think, how the connection between science and then social movement and food system transformation. I think we will have a very interesting to discuss after this presentation. But before we discuss, let hear another presentation. Is Famara already here or not yet? Hi, Famara, are you already joining us? Or if not yet, then we proceed to the next speaker, and then after that we can check again whether Famara is already joining us or not. So because Famara is not yet here, I guess we proceed to Ibu Pipi. I see that she's already joining us, Ibu Pipi Supeni. Bu Pipi, silahkan. You have about 20 minutes to present your presentation. Silakan Bu Pipi. Iya. We haven't hear your voice. Bu Pipi, belum kedengaran suaranya, Bu Pipi.
Halo.
Ya, halo.
Oke. Kalau saya bisa terdengar?
Terdengar. Silahkan Bu Pipi. Sekitar
Oke,
20 menit ya, Bu.
Oke, terima kasih.
Suaranya hilang, Bu Pipi.
Waktu di Kalimantan Timur, selama... Halo?
Ya, Bu.
Oh, iya. Apakah bisa terdengar lagi? Mohon maaf karena jaringan kami hari ini gangguan.
Ya, sudah Bu. Sudah bisa terdengar. I can hear you.
Oke, terima kasih. Selamat sore, selamat Hari Masyarakat Adat Sedunia buat kita semua. Saya Pipi Supeni dari komunitas Dayak Benua, Kalimantan Timur. Saya bergabung di organisasi Perempuan Aman. Kami bergerak bersama masyarakat adat, khususnya untuk isu-isu perempuan adat. Di kesempatan ini saya akan membagi cerita kami tentang ketahanan pangan di komunitas, khususnya komunitas Dayak Benua. Secara turun-temurun, kami komunitas Dayak Benua memenuhi kebutuhan hidup kami melalui berladang, berkebun, dan beternak. Kami berladang secara berpindah-pindah. Kemudian kami juga berladang di gunung, tidak di sawah. Dari hasil ladang itu kami kumpulkan, disimpan dalam 1 tahun. Kami sisihkan benihnya sebagai bahan makanan kami dalam 1 tahun itu, dan juga sebagai yang akan kami tanam untuk tahun berikutnya. Kemudian yang kami lakukan saat ini, kami terus menanam bibit tanaman atau panganan lokal yang ada di komunitas yang diwariskan secara turun-temurun dari waktu ke waktu, seperti padi gunung. Nah, kemudian kami juga memperkuat kearifan lokal kami yang mulai redup dengan menghidupkan kembali kerja-kerja kolektif yang sudah mulai tidak dilakukan lagi kami melalui unit-unit usaha kerja bersama dan juga pendidikan adat yang kami bentuk di komunitas kami. Kami kembali kepada di dalam pendidikan adat ini, kami kembali kepada ajaran leluhur dalam merawat dan melindungi wilayah adat serta merawat sumber-sumber panganan lokal yang diwariskan secara terus-menerus atau secara turun-temurun. Kami di suku Dayak Benua menganggap benih tanaman lokal adalah sebagai sumber kehidupan bagi masyarakat benua dan sebagai jati diri kami yang mencerminkan kejayaan dan juga kehidupan dan sumber pengetahuan bagi kami perempuan khususnya. Kemudian kami perempuan adat di komunitas kami sangat memiliki peran yang besar dalam menjaga dan melestarikan sumber pangan di komunitas atau ketahanan pangan di komunitas kami, mulai dari kami yang memastikan ketersediaan benih, melestarikan benih dan menanam di ladang dan di kebun. Kemudian kami menyisikan bibit itu, bibit yang baik dan unggul untuk kami tanam kembali di berikutnya sampai dari pengelolaan, pemeliharaan, perawatannya sampai kami memanen lagi kembali hasil tanaman kami yang ada di ladang. Kemudian juga memastikan sumber panganan ini bisa disajikan dan dinikmati di tengah-tengah keluarga kami di komunitas kami. Kami perempuan adat juga mengetahui kapasitas kebutuhan pangan dan kesehatan keluarga secara utuh baik di keluarga kami maupun di komunitas kami. Nah, bahkan kami perempuan adat juga menjadi juru ritual tradisi berladang untuk menjaga, karena kami sebagai masyarakat adat kami percaya tradisi-tradisi yang diwariskan leluhur itu adalah salah satu nilai yang harus kami praktekkan untuk berladang. Kemudian kami percaya wilayah pengelolaan perempuan adat merupakan bagian dari keberadaannya masyarakat adat yang ada di wilayah adat kami. Kami perempuan adat mengelola kawasan yang produktif, menggunakan pengetahuan dan dipraktekkan dan dikembangkan dari waktu ke waktu, disesuaikan dengan kebutuhan dan kebutuhan yang ada di komunitas disesuaikan dengan perkembangan zaman. Dan kami juga membagi pengetahuan kami kepada generasi penerus. Tadi yang saya jelaskan ada sekolah adat. Kami menjaga dan melindungi kearifan lokal dan budaya kami dalam melestarikan sumber makanan atau pangan, ketahanan pangan kami melalui belajar bersama. Nah, di sini kami belajar bercocok tanam, terus memilih benih. Nah, di sekolah ini juga, di sekolah adat ini juga membantu kami mempersiapkan generasi baru yang sangat erat kaitannya hubungannya dengan ketahanan, terus siap mendukung kami dalam melindungi hak, budaya, kemudian wilayah adat kami juga, dan bersedia untuk mengeksplorasi dan mengusulkan cara-cara baru yang menarik untuk memajukan pengetahuan dan praktek-praktek baik, sambil tetap mengikuti jejak-jejak nenek moyang kami dalam menjaga. Nah, kami percaya kedaulatan pangan itu sebenarnya ada di tangan kami sebagai masyarakat adat. Dengan kami memperkuat produksi pangan, berarti kami memperkuat untuk wilayah adat kami sebagai sumber kehidupan yang di komunitas benua. Nah, terutama ketahanan pangan yang berkelanjutan. Nah, dalam kami melakukan praktek-praktek baik untuk ketahanan pangan dan melestarikan pangan di komunitas, kami memiliki tantangan sebenarnya. Selain perubahan iklim yang terjadi, perubahan iklim yang tentu saat ini kami sulit membacanya, kami memiliki tantangan lain di wilayah adat kami, di mana wilayah adat kami telah dialihfungsikan menjadi lahan industri ekstraktif. Di sana ada kelapa sawit dan juga pertambangan batu bara. Kemudian dari industri ekstraktif ini mengakibatkan lahan kami itu menjadi sempit, dan kami ada di antara saat ini membeli beras untuk memenuhi kebutuhannya. Kemudian ada juga kita bekerja sama dengan pemerintah untuk komunitas, namun bantuannya masih belum menjangkau kebutuhan-kebutuhan kita di komunitas. Contohnya kami diajak membuat persawahan, sedangkan kami sebagai masyarakat Dayak Benua khususnya berladang di gunung, dan cara kami pun berpindah-pindah. Selanjutnya kami juga saat ini terjadi perubahan iklim, kami sulit menebak tanda-tanda alam seperti perubahan cuaca yang tidak menentu. Saat ini musim panas, seharusnya saat ini kan adalah musim menebas, kami menyiapkan lahan untuk tanam padi di tahun ini. Yang seharusnya sekarang masuk dalam musim panas, tapi saat ini di kampung kami, di desa kami terjadi musim hujan. Dan kami juga sering saat ini, kurang lebih di 15 tahun terakhir, kami mengalami cuaca yang tidak menentu, tiba-tiba banjir, terus kekeringan terjadi, bahkan kami juga sering terjadi kebakaran hutan dalam kurun waktu yang tidak bisa kita prediksikan, kita juga tidak tahu. Kemudian dari hal itu kami juga memanfaatkan beberapa peluang yang ada di komunitas kita sebagai suku Dayak Benua. Kami terus berinovasi dan menyesuaikan diri dengan mempertahankan kearifan lokal dan budaya yang kami miliki. Kami terus melakukan kerja-kerja kolektif dalam unit usaha bersama kami yang kami bentuk secara mandiri, seperti beternak, berladang, dan berkebun, itu untuk kami menjaga ketahanan pangan di komunitas kami untuk terus berkelanjutan dan melestarikan panganan lokal secara berkelanjutan. Kemudian kami juga bisa dikatakan peluang yang bagus juga jika kami bisa bekerja sama dengan pemerintah melalui dinas-dinas pertanian, perkebunan, dan dinas kesehatan dan lain-lainnya instansi yang terkait dengan melakukan pendekatan dan kacamata yang berbasis pengetahuan perempuan adat atau masyarakat adat di komunitas, kemudian berbasis hak dan juga menjangkau kebutuhan-kebutuhan komunitas, khususnya kami sebagai perempuan adat, sehingga pangan kita bisa terus berkelanjutan dan bisa menjadi ketahanan pangan yang terus bisa diwaris secara terus-menerus dan bisa menjangkau dari rumah tangga kita, bisa kita bagikan sampai ke tingkat komunitas dan bahkan bisa lebih luas secara ke daerah, provinsi, dan secara nasional. Kemudian peluang yang bisa kita manfaatkan yang selanjutnya adalah adanya yang memang mendukung gerakan-gerakan kita yang selama ini sebagai masyarakat adat yaitu memperjuangkan haknya kita dan juga wilayah adat kita yang masih terus saja tergusur atau dirampas oleh korporasi. Karena ketika hal ini terjadi, maka kita sebagai masyarakat adat pastinya walaupun dalam perjuangannya kita untuk kedaulatan pangan, jika wilayah adat kita terampas, maka sama saja kita akan mati secara perlahan-lahan. Karena tidak ada tempat, ada lahan yang bisa kita gunakan, yang akan kita kelola untuk memastikan ketahanan pangan itu terus berkelanjutan sampai generasi yang selanjutnya, dari kita sekarang sampai generasi selanjutnya, dan kita memastikan pangan kita yang berkelanjutan jika kebijakan-kebijakan ini tidak bisa mendukung gerakan kita untuk mempertahankan hak-hak kita di wilayah adat kita. Terima kasih. Bisa saya sampaikan dan saya bagikan kepada teman-teman. Selamat sore, salam Nusantara.
Baik. Before I continue, sebelum saya lanjutkan, Bu Pipi, apakah bisa buka videonya atau karena di situ bermasalah? Saya ingin berkenalan nih, melihat wajah Ibu. Oke. So this is a Dayak Nis ya. Dayak, perempuan Dayak. Kita sama-sama Dayak loh, Bu. Nanti kita kenalan lebih jauh. Oke, so it was very interesting ya, presentation by Ibu Pipi. She's an activist indigenous community in East Kalimantan ya. And she actually told us about traditional practices, how to conduct traditional agriculture. It's basically it's a Sweden agriculture, and in that agriculture system they have problems like how to adapt to the climate change, as well as also the problem they face because of the intrusion of or penetration of capitalist industrial extractive industry. But they still have tried to maintain their culture in agriculture practices. Okay, next presenter before we have a question and answer. The last then is Famara. Apakah Famara already joining us here? I cannot.
Pak Rilus, I think Famara is not here yet, and maybe it's because there has been a change in the link of the Zoom. So maybe he did not get the latest Zoom.
The new one. Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
we've been contacting him, but yeah, it's not answering.
Okay.
Well. I'm so sorry.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Dami. Then in this case, then we can proceed to our discussion. I think maybe a lot of things actually interesting to be discussed. So I want to open up for us to discuss, and I make this discussion more informal. So you can raise your hand or just open your video and voice, then you can directly asking question to both of our speakers. I open now the opportunity for you. Anybody, just raise your hand or whoever. It seems Dulce, you want to ask something? I can see your. After that, and Bu Dami will ask question. Please, Dulce.
Thank you very much. My question for Lakshmi and Bibi, what social protection measures, including local government policies and ordinances, as well as on the national level, are being done or would you recommend to be done so that there will be stronger protection for indigenous people's rights in local communities?
Okay, thank you very much. Maybe just continue to Bu Dami, then after that, both of our speakers can respond. Bu Dami, silahkan, please.
Okay. Thank you so much, Pak Rilus. Well, first of all, I would like to thank Ibu Laksmi for a great presentation as always. Lots of shocking, shocking. Yeah, lots of shocking expression, I think, but I love it. So science is political. I think this is where it differs between social science and natural science. The natural science always believe that science is neutral.
Yeah.
I was like that also until I learned from Pak Rilus and everybody else. But the question is this though. Okay, boy, this is really hard. Okay, science is political, and then Bu Laksmi also mentioned about political capture, etc. But then you have this other view that actually science is neutral. So how do you explain? Because there are more people who does not understand that science is political and that science can actually influence mindset, etc. I mean, is it a bad thing if science is political? I think that's my first question. Is it a bad thing, or is it actually a good thing that we can use for the goodness of mankind? So how do you perceive science if it's political? Is there something that we have to guard? So that's a very, very big question, the first question. The second one is for Ibu Pipi ya. Ibu Pipi, terima kasih banyak. Presentasinya luar biasa, Ibu Pipi. Saya ingin bertanya tentang pengalaman Ibu di dalam menjalankan ini tadi kearifan tradisional dan sebagainya. Ibu, dalam kacamata Ibu, apakah ada peranan dari perguruan tinggi atau peranan dari peneliti di dalam usaha Ibu untuk menjaga nilai-nilai tradisional? Apakah perguruan tinggi itu merupakan ancaman bagi Ibu? Atau perguruan tinggi itu atau pendidikan itu merupakan sesuatu yang sebetulnya diperlukan dan didambakan oleh Ibu? Mungkin itu saja Pak Rilus.
Okay. So before I give the opportunity for the speakers to respond, I just want to get to know. Yeah, Dulce, are you from the Philippines and stay in the Philippines?
Yes, I am from the Philippines, but I have been in Indonesia several times.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much.
So I've been active in Think 20. The different conferences of Think 20, and I'll be attending the Think 20 Summit virtually from the Philippines. I'm based here right now.
Okay, thank you. If you need, I don't know if there is a translation. Yeah, if you need translation later on, but at least the main points I can later on explain from Ibu Pipi. Yeah. Okay, I give first chance to respond, I think, to Ibu Pipi. Jadi Ibu Pipi silahkan untuk memberikan respon. Tadi pertanyaan dari Ibu Dulce itu adalah apakah ada perlindungan ya dari pemerintah misalnya begitu ya kepada Ibu Pipi dan teman-teman begitu dalam mempertahankan ya kebiasaan praktek-praktek selama ini, praktek pertanian yang dilakukan selama ini. Apakah ada perlindungan dari pemerintah? Sorry, nanti habis ini baru Pak Awan ya ini. Silakan Bu Pipi duluan, nanti Ibu Laksmi setelah itu.
Oke, terima kasih atas kesempatan yang diberikan kepada saya. Apa saja perlindungan lokal? Saya izin matikan kamera, nggak apa-apa kah?
Ya, boleh.
Oke. Izin matikan kamera. Apa saja perlindungan lokal? Sejauh ini yang kami lakukan khususnya di tingkat lokal, kami lebih melakukan dengan mempraktekkan hukum-hukum adat yang diwariskan secara turun-temurun di wilayah adat kami. Kemudian kalau di daerah atau kita melihatnya dari tingkat pemerintahan, kita juga mengikuti undang-undang yang dikeluarkan oleh pemerintah, baik itu undang-undang umum maupun perda. Dan kemudian kita juga di dalam masyarakat adat, kita juga saat ini masih memperjuangkan rancangan undang-undang pengakuan perlindungan masyarakat adat yang masih payung hukum yang memang belum disahkan sebagai perlindungan kami sebagai masyarakat adat. Jadi memang dalam pertanian sendiri, kami sendiri saya dalam pertanian atau perladangan atau dalam memastikan ketahanan pangan ini berkelanjutan, contohnya saja kami ini menjadi tantangan terbesar kami sebagai petani yang harus membakar lahan ya Pak ya. Membakar lahan. Yang kemudian ada undang-undang yang melarang kami membakar lahan jika lahan itu melebihi dari beberapa hektar, 1 sampai 2 hektar, sedangkan kadang kita bisa berladang itu lebih daripada 3 hektar 4 hektar karena di dalam situ ada beberapa keluarga gitu. Dan itu menjadi tantangan kami, dan juga kalau dikatakan perlindungan, bisa saja kami tidak mendapatkan perlindungan karena ada undang-undang itu, karena dengan alasan kami yang mengakibatkan kebakaran hutan atau lahan karena kami berladang. Sedangkan sejauh ini kami tidak ada hasil yang mengatakan masyarakat, hasil riset atau penelitian mengatakan bahwa masyarakat adat membakar ladang dan membuat kebakaran hutan. Karena kami prakteknya secara tradisional, kami ada cara-cara tersendiri, cara khusus kami masyarakat adat dengan juga melalui hukum-hukum adat budaya kami, bagaimana kami memastikan ketika kami membakar ladang tidak terjadi kebakaran. Jadi perlindungan itu yang memang masih kami perjuangkan sejauh ini, yaitu rancangan undang-undang pengakuan dan perlindungan masyarakat adat, baik itu dalam mengelola wilayah adatnya untuk kedaulatan yang ketika adatnya bisa dilindungi, maka ketahanan pangan atau kedaulatan pangannya akan bisa dilindungi.
Baik Bu Pipi, langsung aja yang untuk tadi untuk Bu Dulce, do you understand in bahasa or not? Sorry.
Actually, there's an interpreter there. So if
okay. Sorry.
Turn on the listening to English, she can understand because there's a simultaneous translation. But I don't know. Did you turn that on?
Okay. I hope. So langsung aja Bu Pipi langsung respon untuk pertanyaan Bu Dami. Apa peranan perguruan tinggi tadi itu ya? Setelah itu baru Bu Laksmi.
Terima kasih. Apa peranan atau kemudian bisa menjadi kerja-kerja yang baik? Kalau menurut saya sendiri, perguruan tinggi itu berperan baik sebenarnya untuk kita di komunitas atau perempuan adat membangun kerja sama dengan perguruan tinggi. Yang pertama yaitu kita berbagi pengetahuan, contohnya di perguruan tinggi mereka memiliki tempat-tempat secara akademis untuk melihat dan sebagainya, dan bisa tertulis dengan baik proses-proses yang ada atau praktek-praktek yang bukan di kita masyarakat adat. Sejauh ini kita masyarakat adat tertantang punya tantangan tersendiri, tidak bisa menulis baik riset maupun hal-hal yang terjadi di komunitas itu hanya menjadi pembelajaran dan menjadi budaya. Kalau dengan perguruan tinggi mereka bisa membuat itu menjadi tulisan yang baik dan menjadi suatu tulisan menjadi sumber pengetahuan dibagikan kepada orang. Kemudian perguruan tinggi menurut saya bukan ancaman, akan lebih bagus kalau kita bisa membangun kerjasama dengan perguruan tinggi dalam memastikan lokal dan budaya ini terus berlanjut, dan juga kita dengan cara kearifan lokal ini kita juga memperjuangkan ketahanan pangan untuk kedaulatan pangan kita, baik secara rumah tangga maupun sampai ke tingkat yang lebih luas, komunitas, wilayah, dan sampai ke tingkat nasional, seperti itu untuk yang perguruan tinggi. Kalau menurut saya memiliki peranan penting, namanya masyarakat adat. Mereka juga di perguruan tinggi juga pastinya memiliki pengetahuan yang berbeda dalam melestarikan lokal atau panganan yang sudah dimodifikasi dengan pupuk dan sebagainya, seperti itu.
Oke, baik. Terima kasih Bu Pipi. Next, please, Bu Laksmi.
Thank you, Pak Rilus. I don't think I have any additional information to add from Ibu Pipi explanations about the situations of law and regulations, either at the local or national level, for the protections of indigenous people. So yes, I agree, it's still problematic, and I think as far as I know, AMAN, the Associations of Indigenous People in Indonesia, has already pushed the government to issue the law on the protections of indigenous people rights since 2014. So it has taken too long to be issued. On the other hand, international instruments are already there to be used, and it is really up to the political will of the government to use it for the protections of indigenous people. And for Ibu Dami's questions, it's always a very hard questions. In my point of view, science should be political. It's a good thing. It's a good thing because at least for me, I see science exists in society where there is norms and values that embedded into science itself. What I mean is when science position itself as neutral and position itself as an instrument within the society, it actually blinds itself into the fact that society is not monolithic. Society is full of relations of power. Society is full of norms and values that should be taken into account by the production of knowledge, scientific production of knowledge, whether or not the science is used for the betterment or for the good of mankind. So that's why, in my point of view, when it has an interface with policy making, whether it is with the policymakers or with the social movement, the political awareness of the science position itself is very important. Whether or not it takes into account in the policy making, it matters. It should not be put as a matter of decisions by the policymaker itself, because sometimes the policy that is not based on evidence, on scientific, does not have scientific ground, can be detrimental to the social and ecological conditions. That's why for myself, and probably in the field of social movement, science is not at all neutral. And there is also a study about the rights to science, and citizen science should be taken into account in the policymaking processes, because in the context of food system transformation, it's really clear the exclusions of citizen science is appear very evidently. Mungkin itu Pak Rilus yang bisa saya sampaikan. I think you are still muted.
Rilus masih mute.
Oh, okay. So, okay, thank you very much for the respond from Bu Laksmi. Bu Dami, you want to respond a little bit before you? I know that you have something.
Well, I'm just, yeah, this is a very difficult situation that the world is in right now. And we rely so much that science can actually provide evidence. However, there is also this uncertainty in science. So how do you handle uncertainty for policies? Those are the question that I'm still asking also to myself. And let us not forget that also science evolved, you know, just like the Green Revolution. We thought it was a good thing. Well, some still think it's a good thing. But I mean, we learn that through our mistake, we learned that, okay, there is something that is not correct. And so I think using science for policy, it is always, we still have to be very careful because there is this uncertainty that we need to always think about. But with respect to social movement, I really would like to hear more. I would like to see more examples, because I think it is very powerful. And if we can have this social science social movement interface, I really would love to see it happening. And hopefully there are many people here in the audience are part of that. So I'm ready to listen from all the other audience. Thank you, Pak Rilis.
Okay, thank you. So before Pak Satyawan, I just want to read one question in the in my chat. I think it's sent directly to me. Yeah, from Pak Heru, yeah, from Pak Heru, I think. Heru Hermawan. I'm from the Pak Heru, do you want to say it directly or just I can read it if it is needed? Pak Heru? Okay, so I just read then. Heru, I'm from the state SPP vocational school. I want to ask question. I saw sustainable agriculture, but how come there are still forest fires and shifting agriculture, and how to tackle climate change in agriculture? Okay, so that's a question. I think both of you can respond later on. And now, please, Pak Satyawan, silakan, Pak.
Okay, thank you very much. Two questions. One is for Ibu Pipi Supeni. Ya, Ibu Pipi tadi saya kemukakan dalam bahasa Indonesia ya. Ibu Pipi tadi kemukakan bahwa program-program pemerintah tidak sesuai sebetulnya dengan kondisi setempat, ya. Misalnya penduduk berladang, tetapi program-program pengembangan itu di bidang persawahan misalnya saja, ya. Ibu Pipi kemukakan bahwa pengetahuan lokal itu mengajarkan mereka untuk aktif berladang tanpa merusak lingkungan. Ya. Pertanyaan saya sebetulnya, apakah para akademisi ikut membantu para penduduk, ya, warga masyarakat Benuak misalnya, untuk lebih mengembangkan sistem perladangan mereka menjadi lebih baik, gitu ya, lebih produktif, lebih aman, dan lebih sesuai dengan kebutuhan zaman, gitu ya. Setahu saya, ICRAF, salah satu lembaga penelitian agroforestry yang besar internasional,
Pak Awan masih mute.
Oh, sorry. Ya, jadi ICRAF, satu lembaga penelitian internasional, pernah punya program rationalization of shifting cultivation, di mana penelitian-penelitian dilakukan untuk membuat sistem perladangan menjadi lebih modern, lebih produktif, lebih aman, tanpa merubah terlalu besar. Ya. Ini sepertinya lebih cocok dengan kondisi masyarakat benua dibanding dengan program pemerintah, misalnya yang mau mengembangkan persawahan, misalnya. Ya, satu respons pemerintah untuk membenarkan penyempitan lahan-lahan warga setempat. Ya. Jadi karena bertambah sempit, karena HGU banyak, maka biarkan mereka bersawah saja, gitu ya. Tapi sepertinya penelitian-penelitian dan pengembangan seperti yang dilakukan Ikraf itu lebih bermanfaat bagi masyarakat benua. Apakah Mbak Pipi atau Ibu Pipi pernah mendengar program seperti itu, gitu ya? Apakah ada akademisi yang ke sana untuk membantu warga mengembangkan sistem perladangannya? Itu untuk Mbak Pipi. Ya, untuk Laksmi, Mbak Laksmi, saya tuh quite worried of this present condition, ya, where if you are talking about closer ties, so we see more closer ties between corporation and science. Academicians must flocking into the arms of corporation in their CSR programs, and because the bigger the corporation, so they can manage or they try to develop their own research potentials, by buying actually academicians, inviting academicians into their corporations, so they are become more and more independent from research and development institutions outside the corporations. And closer ties is also, you see also between corporation and state, because politicians are part of the corporations too. Yeah. And then you have also the development that the states has more intimate relation with science. Yeah? For example, we see presently the change of BRIN, or LIPI into BRIN, for example, you see this kind of movement. So the university have the difficulties to preserve their independency. Well, in this situation, it is difficult for universities to develop alternative and alternative ways to the existing system, food production system, large scale, large scale farming, corporate farming, which become dominant actually at the moment. Yeah. So what is actually, what can we do with this trend? Yeah? Actually, I have to think about it too, of course, and do something about it too. But what's your opinion about that? Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you Pak Awan. Very interesting question. Bu Pipi, silahkan untuk pertama menjawab pertanyaan dari Pak Setiawan tadi, silahkan.
Ya, terima kasih Pak Setiawan atas pertanyaannya. Sangat menarik sekali tadi Pak bahwa ada memang sistem yang memang bisa mengakomodir dari cara-cara pangan atau pertanian di suku Dayak Benua. Sejauh ini saya akan menjawab lebih cepat. Sejauh ini saya belum pernah, khususnya saya ya, pastinya kawan-kawan juga belum pernah mendengar sistemnya yang dikatakan oleh Bapak Setiawan tadi, sistem ikrak ya. Dan kemudian memang sejauh ini belum ada ya sebenarnya secara akademisi yang meneliti sebenarnya meneliti yang bisa dilakukan di tempat kita, karena memang beberapa program itu yang memang dibawa oleh pemerintah, dibawa dengan yang masuk melalui dukungan-dukungan dana desa yang dibawa ada pemetaan sebenarnya di situ, pemetaan kebutuhan, terus sumber daya manusianya, sumber daya alamnya seperti apa di situ, berapa banyak, dan sistemnya seperti apa yang memang bisa kita lakukan bersama-sama. Jadi memang sejauh ini belum pernah mendengar dan belum pernah ada penelitian yang dilakukan khususnya di tempat kami dan juga di tempat kami bersama-sama perempuan adat yang melakukan gerakan untuk kedaulatan pangan ini, Pak. Seperti itu.
Oke. Terima kasih. Next, Bu Laksmi, I think very interesting question from Pak Awan, since it seems that the science is now being hijacked, being hijacked by the corporation and the state to further their own interests. But now, how do we use science as a basis of social movement instead? Please, Bu Laksmi.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, of course, universities and research needs funding. And most of the funding, or majority of funding, comes from state funding. I don't know, I only have a short period of teaching and becoming faculty member of in the one of university, but at that time I experienced there is a freedom to choose the topics of research, and that's probably the way to maneuver in the state funding provisions for research, how we formulate the research topic, and then how we formulate the aims and the productions of the result itself as the interest of the state topic itself. I understand that it is not easy because if we want to seek funding outside state funding, it will be we will encounter the offer of the corporations funding, and also probably from donor agencies. And in this case, we may want to think strategically whether or not this funding can control our research and our findings and the use of our findings. I think it's also a matter of crafting the research projects, but there is still possibility to produce results that useful for the formulations of the alternative production system, because as you all may understand, agroecology itself is the alternative production system and based on scientific research, and it is a political science. So that's why I think nothing is not possible.
Okay.
Yeah.
Bu Laksmi, can you just proceed to respond to Raymond Senner? It is posted in the chat.
Yes, Raymond, I don't have the numbers right now to share with you about the needs of food consumptions in Indonesia based on the number of the populations. But also there is a very contested issues about whether or not we need to import rice or whether we should grow our rice ourselves to provide the national consumptions. And as you may already know, the ambitions to provide our own national consumptions by growing our food by ourselves were the project that dated to the about 30 or 40 years ago. And it is not still, it is not successful. And in my point of view, it's not about whether or not food production based on smallholders is not capable of providing food for all Indonesian people. But because Indonesian state is engaged with international agreements in free trade, and it's including agricultural and food commodities that bind the mode of production of food mode of production in Indonesia, that should allocate the production for export purposes, and from that, the balancing of export import of food becomes the main considerations of food production in Indonesia. We never tried to have food production nationally, like probably as Cuba or even as Vietnam or even as Thailand. Yeah, they can produce nationally, provide food nationally, and also can export. I think it's not because of the Malthusian thinking also, but also we need to take into account the political economic conditions of today situations, where most of the land that available for food, as Ibu Supeni explained earlier, has already turned into mining and oil palm plantation. Yes, that means that was meant to provide export commodities for Indonesia. So it's not an easy answer to that. It's not only the calculations, a Malthusian calculation that needs to take into account, but also how the smallholders in Indonesia can give an opportunity or a chance to provide food for us. That ever happened.
Okay, but I have a feeling, Bu Laksmi, that actually in reality, especially in rural areas, actually rural community just produce for themselves at least, yeah. So it is not provided by the import, for example, for their everyday consumption. So I guess in general, most of Indonesian citizens still consume national production actually for the main staple food. That's my, my guessing, yeah, based on observation in the villages and also, yes, especially in villages, I guess. Okay, anyone?
Well, can I comment a little bit?
Yeah, please.
On that?
Please.
Many farmers, even in Java, the most productive food agriculture, most farmers are net buyers of food. Yeah? So they have a certain amount of food produced by themselves, but not enough to cover the whole year. Yeah? So they are mostly net food buyers too. So that becomes very dangerous if there is a increase in price of food, yeah, because of geopolitical situations, etc., etc. Climate change. That's it. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. Okay. Anybody else want to have some comment, or you can also contribute your experience or knowledge, not only a question. Pak David Ardian, do you have any? Bu Dulce first. You have any comment, please?
Yes. I posted in the chat box the top 5.
Yeah.
Yeah, the top 5. Because I participated. I'm one of the United Nations food systems advocates. So I participated in the national dialogue and the regional dialogue in ASEAN, as well as in the UN food systems itself. And I think the top 5 action areas that are mentioned in the chat box are related or are aligned to the presentations of our speakers today. Now, maybe I can just share some best practices at the
Sure.
ASEAN region. So not only in the Philippines, but in the ASEAN region. During COP21 in Paris and in COP26 Glasgow, there is an initiative called Sustainable Finance, which is Sustainable Climate Finance. So which means that part of this initiative would be a whole of society approach, not just government or just the private sector, but everyone involved, including the most vulnerable sectors of society. So which means the indigenous people, the women, the elderly, the differently abled people, and many others who are vulnerable will have a say in the collaboration. Now, part of this climate resilient development would be the use of information and communication technology, as well as partnerships with state colleges and universities which have food-related courses. So I would just share here, in the Philippines, that is what we have been doing so that we were able also to develop, let's say, a mobile application for farmers to link them directly to potential buyers of their produce, so that the cost will be more or less at a reasonable one, as opposed to if there are middlemen who will be adding more and more. So at the same time, we were also able to develop certain applications in order to help farmers and indigenous people fight the diseases that are usually connected with crops, especially, and then develop tissue culture also for specific high value crops, and to develop more climate resistant varieties, something like that. So that is that is what we are doing, not only here in the Philippines, as I said, but it's part of the ASEAN initiatives to recover together.
Okay, thank you very much.
Before, can I have say a bit about it?
Sure.
Actually, that's the point of debate in the event of UNFSS itself. The emphasis on discussions about the Industrial Revolution 4.0 is very strong and dominant, and there are eroding voice of agroecology and the use of indigenous people local knowledge to inform science that puts in the background. So I think, of course, this is not a fair situation where the different voice given a chance to be heard. But the scientific group of UNFSS has built very specific outlines for discussion that push into technological innovations and biotechnology, rather than discussing about the options of alternative of using agroecology or indigenous people knowledge for the advancements of, for the transformations of food system, global food system today. So I just would like to emphasize that your voice, Duce, has already given a big space in the UNFSS, but the other voice becomes a voice, the othering voice. So that's the problem.
Yeah, maybe just one short. I mentioned earlier, I am also a member of the World Network. I am also indigenous. So which means that here, at least here in the Philippines, actually, when when we're talking of agriculture and agroforestry, it is always a collaboration with the different communities. It is not only the industrial sector that is being heard, but I am a third generation farmer. My grandfather, my father were farmers who rose out of poverty. So I know what it is like. And that is the reason why here, what we do our best is that how to integrate traditional knowledge, how to preserve cultural heritage without encroaching on the rights of indigenous peoples, and how to merge this using now the technology that is available, and how to preserve the crops that we have, especially just during this pandemic. I can share this with you. We had a 7.3 earthquake in North Luzon. We have very strong typhoons, one after the other, and we are still recovering right now. So thank you. Thank you for the very fruitful presentations and discussions. I'm honored to be with you.
Okay, before others maybe have a question, I just want to raise one question. Anyone in this webinar can respond to my question. So we have a dialogue. Is science really matter for social movement in order to produce food system transformation? I wonder, because whatever the basis of the social movement, when it is against the main, the main paradigm that is held by the government as well as the big corporation, maybe it doesn't really matter whether your social movement is based on science or based on just imagination, probably. Anybody can respond to my question. Yeah, Bu Laksmi first, of course.
Yeah, can I respond to that? It's a very provocative question, Parilus. But actually, as we all understand that the falling of this food system, the global food system today, is just because of this mainstream paradigm, because of the inability of this mainstream paradigm to deal with ecological destructions and the inequality that heightened in this time of even in this time of pandemic. And as you may also of course understand, that the pandemic is a very evident of this inequality situations. So how can a social movement engage with the science? Of course, the science that we need is the science that can answer that kinds of problems, the kinds of ecological debt, that kind of inequality, and that kind of marginalizations of indigenous people and women, and so on and so forth. So we've never based our movement on imaginations only. The imagination is important, because without imagination you cannot imagine a different world. And to come into the realization of the different world, we need science.
Thank you. Anybody else want to respond or ask question? Julie, how are you, Julie? Thibault, I think, yeah, please, Julie. Long time not to see you.
Hi, Oil. Yeah, to just reflect on your question. Yeah, I was thinking, I guess it depends on the purpose of the social movement. If I see like the purpose of the food movement is to influence their national politics, to get more, I don't know, support for this specific type of farming, which is like maybe agroecology, then I think they definitely need the support of science to actually be, how do you say, like credible enough like, for instance, like having more research in agroecology and proving that to the politics that yes, it is better, and yes, it's able to produce enough to feed their at least local or national population. Like all these studies that, I don't know, like would prove that agroecology can feed the world and everything. I think it's very useful, valuable, and very important science that social movements that, for instance, support agroecology should definitely use. Otherwise, yeah, they won't get the support from governments without science, I think. Just a thought.
Yeah, very interesting. Thank you, Julie. Anyway, long time not to see you, yeah? Okay. I think you're in Paris, are you? Or in the Netherlands?
No, right now I'm somewhere in France, in the countryside, but yes, I will be in Paris next year.
Okay, good, because I think this is very interesting, become international really. Okay, we still have like 10 minutes if anyone wants to have a comment or a question or whatever. Maybe I just give to David Ardian. Do you have any thought that you want to share? How for example, to use science in social movement, especially in achieving the food system transformation. Maybe you have experience or things like that. Or anyone else? Raymond, do you have any comment on that point that you can share?
I have a comment.
Okay, please. Okay, please, Pak Awan.
Well, maybe if a social movement cannot have support from science, it is important that science do not support corporations to break the struggle of the social movement. That's the problem, I guess, because science can delegitimize movements very, very well. And we see that almost every day in our higher education ecosystem. That's one thing, I guess, that we have to think about. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so using Marxian terms, we need praxis, yeah, theory to practice and practice based on theory, more or less like that in the social movement. Okay. Bu Laksmi just smile. Anyone else? We still have like 5 or something minutes. No one? Julie, no more comment or whatever? Okay. Yeah, you want to say something, it seems? Okay.
No, I'm just thinking about, yeah, how science just chooses what argument to prove. Like if they just are asked to prove that, I don't know, like pesticides will increase production, then they will try to force that. And sometimes, yeah, I feel like we already had these discussions in the 2020, like previous events, like it's very easy maybe to, with science times, to tweak and show, like try to prove one argument and just actually force it. And I think that's a bit dangerous with science. Like we need to be critical about that. Yeah.
So back again to Ibu Laksmi said that science is political. It is not neutral. Okay. Anybody else? If otherwise, then we can just any last word, maybe last thought from Bu Laksmi and also Bu Pipi seems to be already disappear, yeah, maybe because of the internet network. So probably we just close by a closing statement, maybe from Bu Laksmi. Oh, Bu Pipi is still there, yeah. Bu Pipi, adakah apa namanya kata-kata penutup Bu Pipi untuk kita pada sore ini? Silakan.
Oke, terima kasih. Kata-kata penutup dari saya sebagai perempuan adat. Mari kita terus berjuang dan kembali ke komunitas. Walaupun kita menempuh pendidikan dimanapun berada, kembalilah ke kampung kita. Mari kita bangun kampung kita, mari kita bangun komunitas kita. Kita tetap jaga wilayah adat kita untuk kedaulatan pangan yang terus-menerus berkelanjutan, dan wariskanlah pengetahuan, baik secara pengetahuan secara akademis maupun kearifan lokal kepada generasi-generasi penerus kita untuk menjaga keutuhan wilayah adat dan juga untuk menjaga keutuhan kearifan lokal dan juga untuk menjaga keutuhan pangan di komunitas kita untuk tetap berlanjut. Terima kasih.
Terima kasih Bu Pipi. Berikutnya silakan Bu Laksmi, closing statement please.
Terima kasih Pak Rilis. Actually, I don't have any more to say, but I think the important point for, at least for me, in this discussion is we need a power balance, and then the science can be a balancing power to have a balance of discussions, debate, arguments, discourse, practices between social movement and people that they represent, and the other actors within food system transformation. That's all, Pak. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And I think as a moderator, I don't want to make a conclusion. I just want to highlight one or two main points that that made by our speaker and from our discussion. For sure, one thing is that social movement that aim to transform the food system for sure need scientific knowledge, scientific base. Otherwise, the argument may be not very strong, and we cannot really fight, to achieve our goals. So it is important to base the social movement on the science. That is one thing. And then it was discussed also that science is not really neutral. Actually, it's a political. So it is very important also to remember that science can be used for the opposite goals. Instead of transforming the system, it may also strengthening the system. So we need to aware about that. And the final point that I want to mention is just it is very important to preserve actually a local indigenous practices that is in accordance with the food sovereignty and also local consumption. I think that's a couple of things that highlight in our discussion this afternoon. So as a moderator, I want to thanks everybody for participating in this interesting webinar. I hope this is you find benefits or benefit from this discussion and webinar. And also I apologize if anything that is not not convenient for us. So once again, thank you very much for everyone. By this, Bu Dami is not here, So I think by this we just close our webinar today or this afternoon. I hope every one of us is doing well. Thank you very much. Julie, bye-bye Julie. See you.
Thank you so
Amit,
much.
Pak Rilus,
Thank
Thank you,
you,
Tunja. Thank you,
everybody.
Laksmi.
Pak Awan,
Thank you, everyone.
semuanya.
Terima kasih,
Pamit.
Bos.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Sophie. Yeah,
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thank you.
Always healthy
Thanks everyone.
Ya,
and long life
terima
for
kasih